last 10 days we definitely need to be here. We've got a lot of stuff going on, live appeals, things like that. So.
Mashallah, mashallah.
What about you? Are you shamelessly sitting in the same place as every day?
You know, I actually changed because the mirror. My wife put a mirror on the other side of the room now, so if I sit in front of the mirror, you can see what's on my screen. So when you're talking, then I'm shamelessly on some other website.
What is that? That massive mirror that you got in your house?
Jim or some?
Is that massive mirror?
Yes, yes, yes.
Man in the mirror.
It's quite massive, you know. It's a bit dangerous, isn't it? You just got it lying there.
No, no, no. This one's in the front room now.
Oh, okay.
But if I sit in front of that mirror, you can see what's on my screen now.
So at least you're not vain when you think that you've got like a huge mirror at home.
Okay, so we're on YouTube as well. So we're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. Alhamdulillah.
My wife gets paranoid when she walks past, like, oh, even over there, because obviously I wear glasses.
Allah. A tour of the man cave. The man cave tour. Is that like that special mirror on the wall? You kind of like look into it and you can.
No, mine makes me look skinny with this. It's the only way.
Mirror on the wall. Who is the worst football team of them all?
Allah. Okay, so let's start, guys. So this is if anyone just tuned in now, this is a podcast. It's called 3 Dates. Let us know in the comments if you guys are enjoying these podcasts and you guys think that we should continue these somehow. And inshallah, maybe after Ramadan, what do you guys think? Think it's something worthy you guys be interested in? Continuing after Ramadan, maybe on a weekly or a fortnightly basis. Yeah.
If you pay me the same you're paying me now, Mufti Saab,
Bro, I'm gonna pay you in akhirah currency.
whatever you're paying me now, if you can pay that same wage.
Akhirah currency, bro. Akhirah currency. So alhamdulillah, we've got our guest on today, and we're not going to be taking too long today because it's one of the last 10 nights, so we don't want to kind of prolong it too much, so at least we can get a chance to read some Quran as well, and you guys also. But we got a guest, alhamdulillah. Brother Usman Rana is with us. Brother Usman Rana, mashallah, is a world-class football player. Alhamdulillah, has participated in many of the World Cups, yeah, in his dreams. Usman, who do you support?
Oh, Liverpool stars. I think that's Moody at the back. I've got Ahmed Said Moody, famous hooligan. Yeah, I know him from uni days. I know him quite well. I'm just gonna say salam to you now, bro. You're a popular guy, mashallah. We need to get you on here more often.
I kick him off. The local fan, I can just kick him off, you know. We just pretend he had a bad connection.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
We haven't played football in ages, bro. I would have broken your leg by now. Yeah.
Where do you guys play? In Star City?
Old Trafford, bro.
Oh, you mean that? Oh, that team.
Yeah, but alhamdulillah, Rana, no Liverpool, no medals for you, no titles, nothing, still no Premier League. We don't Muslim, inshallah, after Ramadan, bro. Inshallah, it doesn't happen, yeah? Eid Mubarak, early. On that note.
Okay, so as we're saying, today's topic is about education, and because Usman is someone who's quite familiar with education, and he himself actually being a teacher. You're a teacher, aren't you, Usman?
Yeah, so I don't teach at school, but I do private tutoring basically full time, and teach.
So isn't that the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. When people think of a teacher, you think, oh yeah, you're teaching a school. But you just paid better, Mufti Saab. You just paid better.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
That's true. No, Naveed, what Naveed is saying is very true, right? So you have more flexibility when you're running your own thing, and the second thing is that I'm just not a fan of the school system, the way that especially works in England or in many countries, to be honest. So
Is that because of the school dinners?
That was the best.
Yeah, actually, yeah. School dinners. I like school dinners, to be honest. I used to sell my dinner ticket for you.
Oh yeah, those ones. Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Yu-Gi-Oh cards. You used to play with Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
This is like year 7, man. Like, yeah.
Mufti Saab, I have to come off this podcast. I'm too old.
What's a Yu-Gi-Oh card?
Yu-Gi-Oh was like new version of Pokemon, I think. Yeah. So, anime.
It's not anime, bro. Sorry, man. It's not anime. It's just a cartoon.
Bro, do you speak back slang? Did you learn back slang at school?
Ime XP Alaxafe. SEA Ime Anke XP Anyway.
Do you understand what you're saying? This is the age test.
Okay, so can you guys hear the sound working?
Usmane Anke Uye understand it.
Oh, they can't hear, guys. I don't know why they can't hear.
Who can't they hear?
Allah, they can't hear, guys. All right, so can you guys hear now? So can you guys speak?
Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, for some reason output's not working.
Mufti Saab, you know what the guys are saying on YouTube?
Go on.
The guys are saying only Mufti Saab's voice can be heard, we can't be heard. Now, I think he's doing it on purpose, you know. We're just on mute. It's gonna be like one of those bad dub films where we're talking like this.
Okay, let's try to figure this out, guys.
I really like the blue that you're wearing, bro. It's all mashallah.
Me?
Everybody's got blue on apart from me, man.
Blue, bro. Blue day.
What did you test me on? On Facebook it's working.
Yeah, Facebook is working live, but alhamdulillah.
Yeah, it should be working now.
Alhamdulillah. So what was it, Usman, that you're saying that you don't actually like about the schools?
Yeah, I think for schools, for me, it's too much bureaucracy in so much so that you can't actually teach the way you want. So I'm sure we've all got many friends that are teachers at school. It's a common profession for a lot of people to go into. And one of the things that you'll hear from them is that there's too much workload, there's too much Ofsted inspections that you're always kind of pandering to the corporate kind of side of the things, if that makes sense, the administrative side of things. So the creative nature actually comes out, and you can't actually teach effectively, or at least that's my opinion anyway. So hence why I've never ever considered ever going into teaching, and I don't think I would ever go into a school teaching scenario. So yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. So I'm a governor out of school.
Okay.
And I'm a parent of 3 kids who goes to school, so I can understand what you're saying. I definitely understand what you're saying, because I think what they have to do is that, because you have Ofsted and stuff in place, that what the teachers feel the pressure to do is to get through the standard rather than actually teaching the child.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're always trying to make sure that you appease your bosses,
Yeah.
as opposed to actually considering the child's best interest. So like sometimes, like at home at the moment with our kids, we're finding that I sometimes only do like 2 hours with them, and I get more done in 2 hours than I feel they sometimes get done in a week in school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's one of the other fundamental flaws of the school. So the school takes 5 years to teach you for GCSEs, and you guys probably won't believe it, or you would believe it. You've all been through the system, yeah. That schools, grammar schools. I have grammar school kids come to me and say, 2 weeks before the exam, that our school hasn't finished the syllabus yet, and I'm thinking, yeah, 5 years. What on earth was your school doing? So this whole thing of stretching it for 5 years and not being able to get it done, there's so many inefficiencies there. Like you even consider a child going through 5 different years. Are they really keeping track of what he or she was taught every year? So you have teachers changing, you have supply teachers coming in, you have students changing sets. So I'm sure most people move sets either up or down. And you can imagine this plethora of kind of information which is just being lost into the surroundings that no one's really taking into account. And I feel schools are somewhat behind in this. And if you compare them to like the tech industry or something, they're just not taking in the data to really acclimatize to the student. So yeah, the school system, not a big fan. I know a lot of people love the school, and I think it is something worthwhile. I don't know. I'll talk without being kind of exposing your personal life too much, but your kids are in primary
Expose it,
school,
bro.
right?
Expose it, bro. This is what we.
Bro, knock yourself out.
Yeah, your kids are in primary school, right? So have you ever considered? I know you're a governor. You ever considered homeschooling?
No.
No, never. You don't think that's a viable option?
No, I don't think. I think there's a level of commitment that you have to homeschool, and there's a level of ability that you have to have.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, there's patience as well, which is one of the skills.
Mhm.
So I think I probably have 2 or 3. Patience is probably where I fall. So it's like I can't wait for school to open up again, not because they're going to learn more, it's because they get babysat for a few hours and they get into a social interaction, and they do learn stuff in that atmosphere. I'm not saying they don't learn stuff. There's other stuff that they learn.
Yeah.
But I think it kind of like you could overlap this with madrasa, right? And I could say that in a madrasa, you go to a mosque and you'll only have 6 minutes contact time, right, for 10 years of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You'll only have 10 minutes contact time with an imam. And even then, he's listening to, like Nav was saying last time in the podcast, 14 different people reading at once to him. And he's able to like decipher everybody's tajweed and the rest of it. And so when you look at that from an education perspective and you ask a scholar and you say to a scholar sometimes, and Mufti might answer this as well, you say to a scholar, well, what's the benefit of madrasa? They say, oh, the mahal is good, the environment is good, and they take things from the environment. Now, I'm not sure where my thinking is with how valuable the environment is. I can see it definitely has a value, and for me, because both me and my wife work, it does count that that they're at school. It helps us and it makes a difference. But we also focus on them a lot at home as well in terms of the education, because we know like school's only going to take them so far.
So I think the question for probably Mufti Saab is like, what as a madrasa, what are you optimizing for? Like, what exactly are we optimizing for? Is it just the environment? Is that as someone who's obviously head of a madrasa, so far, like what are we optimizing for younger kids, for whatever audience level you've got? I think that's the question we should really ask, I suppose.
I personally think I taught kids for about 2 years or so, and I think the biggest problem is parents. I think if parents, because generally you find, for example, if you find a doctor, right, most likely their parents are doctors, right? So you can see it kind of trickling down. It's sort of like a mindset that the parents already have, and then it's a matter of trying to fit that child into that kind of, like, although it's not a nice word, cookie cutter. They already then when they come here, they're not really sure exactly where to put the child. It's just a matter of, like when we were growing up, my parents never put me in tuition, but now all of a sudden tuition seems to be something really. But I personally think a lot of parents don't know tuition, as in they've got the money for tuition, but they don't really know exactly what do I need to inculcate in my child to enhance that studying sort of like mindset. I think that's the main problem that we've got at the moment. It's slowly kind of changing, but I don't know. I mean,
what's up? I think that a question that I'd ask is, because this is something that I do as well. So my kids go like to tuition, right? But I don't send them to tuition so that they can pass the 11 plus. I'm not really interested in the 11 plus, to be honest, because I've seen grammar kids do good, I've seen grammar kids do bad, I've seen comprehensive kids do good, I've seen comprehensive kids do bad. I think what I'm just trying to do is make sure that I can stretch their ability, because I don't have that time to do that at home, that I want somebody just to stretch them a little bit. And I don't think school provides that atmosphere. So for you in your tuition, Usman, how do you view it? Is it about jumping through hoops, or is it about attaining a better understanding of things?
Okay, I think it's a twofold approach. Ultimately, the clients, being the parents that come to me, they do want their kids to get into the top grammar schools, the top kind of universities, and medicine. I would say about 4 out of 5 parents that come to me, they all want to go their kids to go into medicine. A lot of them, as Mufti Liaquat just said, they are doctors. A lot of them are doctors. They come because that's what they want. They want a secure job for their child. So it is a lot about jumping through the hoops, but at the same time, with my hat on, with the kind of the hindsight of my own life and others, I try to instill in the students the ability to kind of think a bit outside the scope of things. So kind of thinking about the problem. And I find this to be one of the major issues. A lot of the people that I know, friends or students, they just can't think about the problem. And that's something that can be taught, and we don't realize it. Thinking can be taught, right? Can you kind of really take a step back and really answer a question properly? Like if I said, why do you drink water? Do you have a reasoned approach to this, or you just say, oh, just because I'm thirsty, right? That's it. Is that where your limit ends, or do you have the capacity to question this and say, why do I drink water? Why does our body need water? Why do I need to go to the madrasa? Why does Ustad teach me, tajweed? Why do I need to learn this? And that I feel is lacking in whether, because what happens in the school system or the madrasa system is you get taught to pass an exam. So you get taught to pass the hifz class, right? So long while ago, I used to do hifz. I never finished it, but I used to do hifz. But the whole scenario was you either learn a page of sabak each day, or you get absolutely battered, right? Absolutely. That's what it was. It was one or the other. Yes, Naveed.
Fuck. That was the way, brother.
Yeah. So
I think just segueing on there, most of us were like, I don't, Usman, you probably as well, 90s kind of like experience, late 90s, early 90s, where you could see from the madrasa system that it wasn't about understanding. It's never been about understanding in most of our communities. So when we were learning Quran, it wasn't about understanding Quran. When we were learning Qaida, it wasn't about understanding the Qaida. Even like Masail about Salat, it wasn't a matter of understanding it. It was just a matter of, let's just tick off the boxes. Is our madrasa doing this? Right, get it done. Parents, they want to see results. They want to see khatam being done. It was that kind of mentality. So I think that poured over into school. So the kind of like, remember the 90s, they used to have that Asian sort of comedians. What were they called, man?
Goodness gracious me,
yeah. And remember in there was like those Asian kind of jokes, and we understood them because they made sense to us. It was like the parents was always after, 100%.
My son got the A star.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so your son only got to B, and they're like, our son's only 7 years old. And yeah.
and that perfection, I think that perfection is the problem. Like looking for results in the form of numbers, looking for results in the form of, passing exams. That's where I think many sort of like non-Asian communities, they, when they kind of like have I don't know how it is, maybe, you guys might know, non-Asian communities, how do they react to their children getting grades? Do they kind of like encourage them for the effort? Or is it more about, no, if you don't get the grades, then, you're not really achieving much?
I think Muftar, there's like a spectrum, even within the Asian and community as well. There'll be like those Asian parents that care, that care and that actively involved in their kids' education. And there's some Asian parents, just like the rest of society, where they're just passive. Their kids go to school, they get excluded from school. It's just all a shrug of the shoulders.
You're not really achieving.
They'll all do. And if you close your eyes and think about your own classroom, Mufsar, you can think of the entire spectrum just in your own classroom. Historically, so I don't know. Nav, what was your experience like?
In school?
Yeah.
Obviously, I haven't taught and I don't have children, so my experience is only, limited to being on the receiving end. School, I was a bit of a trouble kid, to be honest with you, when I was a bit younger.
No way, really, Nav?
Surprise. But alhamdulillah, I was smart, but the thing was, I just enjoyed chilling too much.
I don't think you're supposed to tell people that you're smart. I think other people are supposed to say that, bro.
No, but what I meant by that is I basically didn't need to study. It's like what the brother was saying. I could pick up everything, basically. I'd whack most of the year and then just study the books or find it on the internet and then still manage to pass my exams, basically. I was that kind of student.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
Unfortunately, I probably didn't get the grades that I wanted to get, but I didn't let it hold me back in that sense. We still ended up going to uni, etc. Whether I completed it or not, that's a different story. But what you mentioned a bit earlier, I'll pick up on that really. Even my friend back there, like he comes from a family of doctors, but he works for a charity at the moment, and he's very comfortable, and his family's quite bracket 30 and over up until 40. We had a lot more peer pressure from our parents, and rightly so. We cared a lot more about what the parents thought of us as well, and I think that mindset's changing a lot as well. And to wrap it up, bro, to be honest with you, like do I wish I did things a bit differently? Yeah, and do I agree with what the brother's saying? Yeah, I think it's a little too institutionalized. I sometimes felt, not that I'm saying that I'm some smart guy or anything, but I felt like,
You
why am
already
I doing
did
this?
that,
This
bro.
this is too slow. This is too slow. How can I do everything like 40 to 50% of the what I needed to learn to pass an exam? How come I can do that on the internet in about 2 days, and you guys taught this like during this period of time? So these questions, obviously, when you're later on in life, you do ask yourselves these questions.
Now, can I ask you something then?
Go on, ask away.
Basically, as because you're a poet, right? Would you say that you excelled in English in school?
I was really good at English literature, funnily enough.
And you were terrible at maths.
No, I was actually really good at math. I
That's
took math
strange.
a year early, and then I ended up doing an extra GCSE as well, even though I was a bit of a naughty kid. So I think, it's just the way you are. Sometimes it's the way your brain functions. And some people, I'll be honest with you, I'm not saying people are born dumb and smart. Just the way your brain works, I think it varies. Some people need a bit more extra attention and others don't. Others, you could just leave them to it and they just understand in a different way. Would you agree? Because obviously, like, two of you guys teach in different capacities. Do you agree, Mufti Saab? Some students.
If I go back to what Usman was saying, Usman made a valid point. I think the way Usman is saying of how he questions the student and kind of makes them sort of like think about whatever he's teaching them.
Yeah.
I think that is sort of like that's the teachings of Islam basically. As in, Islam encourages people to think. Yeah, thumbs up. Yeah, is that double thumbs up?
Double thumbs up, brother.
Double thumbs up. So Islam encourages people to think, right? So in other words, having this process of critiquing things and really kind of trying to analyze things for yourself to try and reach. Because if you think about it, like I studied, for example, like I've studied madrasa, right? So, or even I studied school, but those kind of things now I'm trying to think about. Like it's like now it's starting to sink in, and I'm trying to like question things now. Like things I did in GCSE, maybe things I did in A levels, things I even studied in madrasa. Now it's like I'm trying to think of it for myself now. So I'm trying to like understand how it works myself, right? And then when I see what the scholars say or the books say, it makes more sense to me now.
Mufti Saab, did you ever use trigonometry in your whole entire life? I wanted to know.
Yeah.
You actually use trigonometry? Where?
A levels.
You know what I mean, in practical life.
Oh, well, basically, when I'm trying to buy a loaf of bread and I have to try and work out the angle. No, actually, 2 meters. Staying 2 meters away from the guy in front of you. Trigonometry.
Even, let's be totally honest now, since we're on the subject. Everything, no, I don't want to say everything, but I'd say majority of the stuff we learnt in history was bogus. And I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a level of indoctrination that takes place in history class.
Go on, let's give over to our guest, man.
Go on, Usman. Let Usman answer that one.
I mean,
Do you agree, bro? Or do you think I'm being a conspiracy theorist?
No, I don't think it's that. I think that was the last podcast, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. I think, I'm not an expert in history. My background is in more the sciences and the maths. So, but with the history angle, I guess you've got to remember that you're looking at it through the lens of the British government. They're going to teach you through their lens. They're not going to teach you from an Islamic perspective, which, we might be thinking, okay, we want the haqq and we want the straight and narrow version that we've got. That's not going to happen. So yes, it's always going to be rose tinted. History is what's the saying? History is written by the victors, right? So that's how it goes. I think you're right, but that's life. We live under Queen, and we're going.
Sounds like you just told me tough luck, but in a subtle way.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
It's trying to be nice.
But it is true though, isn't it? Like everything you have to like unlearn and learn it again, basically.
That book, you guys read that book, Dumbing Us Down?
Dumbing Us Down?
Dumbing Us Down. It's by John something Gatto.
Oh, yes, yeah. You recommended that a long while ago. I bought that book, yeah.
Yeah, I've read that book. Very good. I mean, obviously, for us, any book is very good. If it's not, as long as it's not your field, all books are good. Once it's your field, right, then you can speak about it. So this guy, basically, he was 30 years. The first time I heard of this book was by Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. This was like in the early 2000s, I think he did a talk, and he mentioned it there. So basically, the guy who wrote it was a school teacher in, I think it was America somewhere, New York possibly, I'm not sure. And he said for 30 years he was a teacher, and he realized that this system is a very, like you were saying, indoctrinating system, right? It's just basically like it was created for factory workers. It was kind of to put them through a system so they could just quickly, like, like factory kind of like just knock them out, get, produce students that were just thinking for the sake of the like institute, right? They were not thinking for themselves. And if you look at it, for example, like other methods of teaching, like for instance, like madrasa system seems to have, in a sense, sort of adopted this as well, not fully. Like for example, you have the age, right? So you have this age system: 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. You have the uniforms, you have the way they sit, you have the kind of like studies, the topics they teach them, and then a lot of the things are not going to be needed. The interesting thing is, although it's very controversial, the Nazis, right? Although no one here supports the Nazis or any other similar mindset, but their system of education was so precise. I was watching a documentary about it, that they would actually, from a young age, they would scout out the kids and would look at the natural sort of like inclinations they had, and then they would select them and put them into the field that they thought they were good at, and then that would hone in on the skills, and then they'd become experts in mathematics, experts in whatever. And this is why it seems as though they the Germans produced some of the most amazing thinkers and scientists in the early 1900s, because a lot of them were even involved later on when America took a lot of the scientists and what was it called, repatriating, what was it called, gave them the American nationality. They made them scientists in NASA and other organizations, right? And I saw this on Joe Rogan. There was actually this guy who's doing this investigation into where the Nazis disappeared to, because a lot of them disappeared to Argentina. And a lot of them got merged into American society by the government. So the way you can recognize them is they have a scar on their face, and that scar basically, I don't know, did you guys watch that what's it?
Is that the Netflix thing?
No, Joe Rogan.
No, there's a Netflix.
Yeah, there's a Netflix documentary. Yeah. So the guy, they have a scar. You know where they get that scar? It's like a sort of like a medal they put on themselves, because they used to do archery. Yeah, what's it called? Sword fighting. What's it called?
Fencing.
Yeah, fencing. So they used to do fencing, right? And they used to like cut each other, and that cut meant like they had reached a certain level, or they fought a particular individual. So they couldn't hide that. They couldn't do plastic surgery to hide that. So that's why if you look at the old pictures of NASA scientists, you'll find a lot of them have this scar. So and at the moment, Israel is actually replicating this system of education in Israel. Yeah, very similar system. And so they look at the kids at a young age, and then they put them into the field that they think they're going to be good at. So instead of just like burning everyone out, like you've seen that meme. I don't know, they attribute it to Einstein. I don't know whether it's true or not. That they got a goldfish and they've got like a bear and they've got an elephant, right? And everyone's taking the same exam, and clearly they're not all going to get the same results. Yeah, and it's like the idea was basically that in school everyone's given the same sort of ubiquitous sort of like exam.
So you're almost like you're lucky if you find your calling in life.
That's it.
Because quite a few people talk about that. They say that actually, you'd be very fortunate to find the thing that you actually fit into. I think UFC fighters use it quite a bit in their interviews. They always refer to it, and I don't know whether it's through their own education, that it's very difficult to find the one thing that you're very good at and actually find that as your vocation in life. And most people will find great difficulty in actually identifying where that is. Obviously, that's based on the assumption that there is something perfect for you, which obviously is a massive assumption in the first place. Usman?
Yeah, I think for what you're both saying is there's a Japanese principle called ikigai. I don't know if you heard of it, Altaf.
Ikigai. How do you spell it?
Ikigai, I believe. Ikigai. So
I'm seeing a trend here, bro. Yogi-O, now this next Japanese thing. Like, okay. Carry on, sorry.
they're at two different parts of my life. Copy. Yeah. So this basically talks about, I think, what you're good at, what the world needs, does it pay well, and one other thing I can't remember. And ideally, if you can find that, the sweet spot, that's kind of what your vocation in life should be. Well, that's what you should go for. And sorry,
The reason for being.
yeah, I suppose the reason for being, but like what you push yourself towards in terms of your worldly life. Obviously, we as Muslims could probably add another, circle of Venn diagram on there to say, does this help us get closer to God ultimately? And and then I think that's where we should be moving towards. I'm not sure about the studies that you're talking about, Mufti Liaquat, because I've heard some kind of contradictory studies to that. Like there was this study about I think they were called the termites or something, about 100 years ago, where they got like really smart kind of kids and they tracked them through life to see how they did, and they kind of ended up doing just normal as everyone else. They ended up being average. Obviously they didn't put them through this experimental routine that you're suggesting, but this was just they just left them as they were, and they kind of said, let's see how this goes. So I don't know. Maybe there is what was this Israeli thing? Do you know what it was called?
It was on a documentary I was watching. Yeah, I have to look it up. It's quite a long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it was about why why they're producing so many scientists per country. So according to that population, they shouldn't be having that many scientists, because the number of scientists that are coming out with breakthrough sort of like discoveries is sort of like unevenly more for them. So they seem to have some system in their education. Well, either it could be that they're really kind of looking for scouting the scientists outside, and most of them seem to be Israeli, like as in Jewish origin, and they're bringing them over.
Yeah.
This was a problem as well in Pakistan. I remember when I was in Pakistan, what was happening was America was recruiting Pakistani scientists. So famous Pakistani scientists like nuclear physicists and mathematicians and just generally physicists and others, they were recruiting them and giving them green cards to come over.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so it's a very active thing that, like in NBA, we've seen an NBA where now they're actually going, instead of looking on the streets of America for the next NBA champion, they're actually going to Africa, and they're training them up in Africa, the young kids. So they're recruiting them, paying for their fees, everything, but it's much cheaper. They're finding the tall, strong build that they're looking for, the classical, sort of like athlete, and then they're shifting them over. So to me, it seems like they're mastering it when it comes to sports. When it comes to sports, they know exactly what they want. But when it comes to education, it seems as though it's very strange. They're not like focusing on.
How well do you think the education is? The education system in this country is compared to somewhere like America or Australia or other places like New Zealand, for instance?
Is that a question for me?
It's a random question. Whoever wants to answer it.
Yeah,
I'm leaving that for you, Usman.
Yeah, I think there's a few different ways to look at it. So a lot of people say, certain systems like the Scandinavian or Finnish system or Singaporean systems, they're quite good, but it depends what lens you're looking at it from. That question is quite broad. So different studies often show you, Finland's doing so amazing, the top of the world rankings, but in what aspect? Are we talking about academic merit? Are we talking about understanding?
I'm talking about, let's just say, children's education from like secondary school.
So what do you mean by that? That's the question I've got to put back to you.
Who's producing the smartest kids?
Smartest kids. Okay, so that's a clear answer. That's China, Pakistan, and India. They don't no one else compares easily. So I tell you why I say that. So first year when I was at Oxford, right, I went to the Pakistani society. Yeah, so as you do, you go to the society and you're like, you first day, you're just speaking to some brothers, and this was one guy starts speaking to me and he's telling me about this fourth year engineer, and he's telling me about him and says to me, this guy, he came top of the class. He's so smart, mashallah. He's absolutely smashing it. And I was like, okay, what did you get? Well, what did he get? This guy is talking about. So, oh, he got 96%. And imagine this, right? This is Oxford. He's, he's the smartest of the smart people there, and this guy is smashing it. And then I spoke to the guy that I was speaking to. I said, okay, what did you get? He goes, oh, I got 93%. And you're thinking like, all right, he's bigging this guy up, and he's got 93% himself. So, right. So, and this is very common. If you go into, especially the sciences, right, and we've all been to hospitals, and we see there's plenty of Asians in the hospitals, right? Indians and Chinese and Pakistan. Partly because there's a lot of us, but also because they're very hardworking. So there's I don't know if you guys have heard the book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. He's a very famous author, right? And he talks about how the Chinese system, why do we have this perception that Chinese are very smart? Did you guys have that kind of perception in your head? We do, right? Most of us do. You might think,
Mathematics,
okay,
yeah.
that's a stereotype.
I mean,
But actually, no, they tend to do well. And one of the reasons is their school year, for example, is a lot longer than ours. So they have like almost 30 days less holidays or something like that, right?
They get like 6 days holidays as opposed to 6 weeks holidays.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. So it's a lot.
That
It's a lot.
actually works out quite well, to be fair.
Which are they?
So and you can trace that back, and it all comes back to habits. And I'm sure Altaf, I believe you saw on LinkedIn or whatever, you were doing your MBA right now, or I don't know, you finished. I'm sure you learn about this in there. About it all comes back to habits. And one of the reasons they say is that a lot of Chinese were farmers, rice farmers, and they had to wake up early for that, spend a lot of time, irrigating the crop. I have absolutely zero idea about farming, by the way. So excuse me if I make a blunder. But my understanding is that that requires a lot of effort. You have to wake up early. You have to put in a lot of effort. And that, when the school system came in, instead of farming, these kids were now putting that same effort into education. And you can see this, especially with our parents, generally speaking, pushing us for education. You can see why Asians typically come to the top. That's Indians, Pakistanis, and Chinese. There's no doubt about it. No one else really compares on a general level. Obviously,
Wouldn't you put Arabs in the same bracket?
See, Arabs. Okay. So Arabs are.
I'm only saying that because there's an Arab here, bro, and you feel been left out.
No, okay. So that's interesting because obviously with the Arab, the wealth in the Arab countries,
Yeah.
I think they're quite slow in catching on to the education system. So now some of them are coming over on scholarships. So and Hamoudi will tell you, how many students are now coming over from Saudi Aramco or some of these big oil companies. Where they're sending over their kids. But prior to that,
Are you using past tense now to describe that, Osman, considering what's happening at the moment?
I mean, this is a unique situation. I'm talking about on the general. Yeah. So I think
Disclaimer.
The Arab countries are, I would say, they're very far behind the curve. They're very far behind the curve. They're trying to replicate stuff. They opened this university about 10 years ago, I believe, or 5 to 10 years ago, KAUST, in Saudi, which is supposed to be like a leading university. They're trying to rival like Harvard's and Cambridge and so on, but they're very far behind the curve at the moment. So
Is it in that city you were talking about, Mufti Saab?
I have a friend, a few students that are actually teaching in Saudi, and they all come out with generally the same complaint, right? Well, complaint and pro. Yeah, so the pro basically is that they hardly have to put any effort in teaching. They say the teaching over there is like no teaching. You don't have to have you don't have to have any sort of like preparation compared to what you have to have in the UK. And the complaint basically is that the school will pass students even if they don't pass. So he goes, once what happened was, he goes, I marked some work, and he goes, lots of students failed them. The head called me. He goes, I went to the head, and the head said, what have you done? I go, I failed them. He goes, no, you can't fail them. You know who their parents are. So it was like one of those ones. And he goes, so many of them.
We're in the wrong country, Mufti Saab.
Yeah, so many of them will just like kind of pass just because who they are, they Saudi citizens, or because of the connections that they have. And he says most of them are not really interested in studying because they're so rich, right?
Just because you inherit daddy's
It's
business
just like,
anyway.
why do we need to study for?
It's not even just daddy's business. Some of the way that the country used to be structured, they've changed it a little bit in terms of like the way their visas worked and stuff now was meant that just by being a Saudi national, they would have like 15, 20 people that would be paying money to them as main sponsors.
Yeah.
So they would be taking a small cut of them from a monthly basis. So the way the society was structured was always overly weighted in their way. Same in terms of business ownership models and everything else. So it just made them lazy.
I think, but
makes them
what you
lazy.
guys are talking about in general, I think it's more like the Qataris, Emiratis, them kind of like people from that region, but generally like Egyptians, for instance. Like I know there's so many Egyptian doctors, people from Lebanon, for instance. Some countries I'd say that they vary, obviously. Not every Arab country is the same. Not everyone can just get daddy to pay the headmaster 10 million to tick the box or whatnot.
Yeah, no. I mean, when we were in Pakistan, there was a madrasa, right? It's called Shehdatpur, right in the middle of like Sindh, middle of nowhere, 5 hour drive from Karachi, and there were Qatar students studying Hifz of the Quran there. And these guys had air conditioning, right? People in the whole, no one in the village had air conditioning. They had it in their bedroom. They had a chef that they brought in from Qatar, and they used to have food that was shipped in from Qatar. Right? These guys are like very, very wealthy, and it was like for them that was a very difficult lifestyle. That was even living under air conditioning in that kind of a village. That was really difficult. So they found studying to be very hard, and for them, obviously making that sacrifice was like a very big sacrifice. So I mean, I don't know really. Historically, I haven't really done any studies on this or seen anyone that has done studies on this. I don't know what the situation in the Saudis is, but I mean, other places clearly they're well ahead, like Egypt, Sham, Syria, Palestine as well. Like Palestine, the number of like PhDs you see coming from Palestine, you'll be shocked. Even from Gaza, like from Gaza, there's PhDs that are coming out, right? I'm always like searching for things, and I find like in Arabic lots of things that have been written by, Palestinians, by Lebanese, Iraqis as well. We used to have a student. Yeah, we used to have a student in our madrasa who's Iraq, right? And he was actually an engineer. Then because of war and everything, he had to go to Saudi. And long story, but very rarely do you find in Saudi. I mean, I don't know, Wallah alam, what the reason for that is.
Do you think the same applies? Obviously, we're talking about like secular education here. Is it the same when it comes to Islamic education? Do you think that these same countries still hold the ball at the like? Obviously, China not being included, but Pakistan. Do you think that they produce like just because of obviously the volume, but conveyor belt style, they churn out loads of students, for instance?
I mean, I can't really say regarding each university, but what I can say is there are two sort of like approaches to studying in the world. One is the madrasa approach, which is basically like you kind of you go through a system of books, right? So you study Arabic, and then after that you go into whatever science you want. And then you have the university sort of style. University style is basically you do like a 2-year or 3-year degree, and then next then you move on to a master's, and then 3 or 4 year masters, and then you can do a PhD on top of that. The difference between the two is pros and cons. Like in the madrasa system, you'll touch on everything, but you won't be an expert in everything, right? So you kind of like will be able to have a conversation with someone on Arabic or on tafsir or aqidah, stuff like that, but you won't be an expert. And in the university one, what they tend to do is they tend to focus on trying to become expert in one field. Like in one subject, in one field, they'll be an expert, right? But then they might not know anything. So for example, like we had in our madrasa, we had a teacher who was actually from Egypt. Egypt used to send to Pakistan teachers on 4-year contracts.
Okay.
So when we were there, there was a teacher there, Sheikh Salah. This guy was an expert in Arabic grammar. Like I've never seen someone teach Arabic grammar like him. So he had a master's degree in Arabic grammar, but he didn't know a word of fiqh. And once what happened in madrasa was when the students used to have registration. So what we would say is labbaik. So if your name was called out, if you said like Altaf, you'd say labbaik. Uthman labbaik. Naveed labbaik. So he turned around, he stopped us. He goes, "Don't say labbaik. It's shirk." So it's not shirk, as in the official position. It's not shirk, right? It's just a response. But because he hadn't studied fiqh And then he said to
Yeah.
us, look, he goes, I'm not an expert in fiqh, but to me it sounds wrong. That you're saying labbaik to me and labbaik should be for God, right? You say in Hajj, which is totally wrong. It's not really kind of like a valid point he's making.
Like the word seerah, isn't it? Now,
You
if
know,
somebody
yeah.
says seerah, automatically going to think that it has to be the life of the Prophet ﷺ now,
So yeah,
because that's
so
how you think.
so sorry for breaking you
Carry
there.
on.
So okay, let me tell you. So basically, that was his. The other thing was his kind of like the way that he was brought up was not like how we were brought up. So we sit on the floor, and he sat on chairs. So he would sit on a chair and teach us. The other thing was like one of the other Egyptian teachers used to actually put the Quran on the floor.
Yeah.
And for Pakistanis, yeah,
Oh,
that is like kufr.
Beadmi.
Abu Lahab, Firaun.
Pakistanis can't put this Rukia leaflet on the floor. What are you on about the Quran?
So this guy, one of our teachers, come to class and he's to put the Quran on the floor. He's to lean on it like this with one arm, and then he's ask all the students, "Oh, how are you? You guys okay? Everyone okay?" And we would say, "Oh, Ustad, can I see your Quran, please? I just want to check something." Grab it from him, put it on the side. So it was like the etiquette. And then like there was another madrasa in Karachi. It was a Salafi madrasa, in fact, and they used to also have the same teacher. So we used to have friends in the Salafi madrasa, and they would say to us, some of these Egyptian teachers, they come to class wearing shorts, like above the knee shorts, and a cigarette in the hand, and like teaching Bukhari with a cigarette. So to us, that was like really strange. That was, as in, you can tell that the bringing up the sort of like education system over there had totally made all of this norm, right, to them. It was just nothing wrong with it, right? Cutting the beard short, nothing wrong with it. All these kind of things. Whether it's based on their fiqh or not, that's some separate thing. And in Pakistan, there was a sharp contrast between the two. And the other thing was like in Egypt, emphasis was more on understanding, and in Pakistan madrasa system, emphasis was more on on the issue of trying to just cover the content. So we did say we're gonna finish in an hour. So okay. So come on, next then. So we've covered that point. Right. So I mean, let's just
read the questions from Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah, go on.
So the what?
See, it's a difficult one because it depends again. What do you want at the end of it? Like I can tell you this, a lot of people that go to Darul Ulooms do not know what they want at the end of it. As in, for the sake of Allah, in brackets. But what does that mean though? You want your child to become an alim, but it's not a function. Being an alim is not a function. Like it's not sort of like a job description. What are you going to do with your life? So if imagine someone said, "Oh, I want my son to be an expert in medicine," but then like, what is he going to do? So he's going to go into a field, isn't he? So I think a lot of people that go into madrasa do not know what they want at the end of it, and this is why it leads to a lot of people getting burnt out. Right? They get burnt out even if they finish the course. They don't really have any passion to sort of like pursue anything which is. So madrasa has its downside. The BA side has its downside as well, as in the BA side doesn't really cover everything thoroughly, right? So a guy who qualifies from the BA side, both graduates will be able to give talks. Giving a bayan has nothing to do with where you studied, right? Being able to give a dars to general public has nothing really. Where it kind of really the litmus test is really where you put them into an environment, you put them into like a job situation where they now have to use their Islamic know-how to resolve situations, whether it's Islamic fiqh council, whether it's to do with teaching in a sort of like madrasa university, whether it's writing some sort of like articles or policy making for. That's when it becomes like sort of problematic.
So, why is it that gap's never like we never see that gap being attempted to be bridged in any really meaningful manner from like anywhere? So like I've spoken to like numerous graduates, worked with numerous graduates from Darul Ulooms that have always struggled to find what's next in life. And then when you get BA graduates, they find difficulties in finding legitimacy within scholarly circles. So there's always issues on both sides. But isn't there any way to bring some of this together, like in a madrasa system, not touching the Islamic side of it, but also like just saying is it fit for purpose for actually preparing the scholars of tomorrow for actually, work, for life, for the way that they rationalize and think, and some of the stuff that Usman was talking about as well, in terms of like really helping them to place themselves better, so that when they are presented with problems, that they have a more structured way or a different way of thinking through those.
I don't know, I mean, you know what? I think it's layered problem. It's multifaceted problem. It starts off. I mean, if I were just to speak aloud, and just just try and just off the top of my head mention some problems. Dars-i-Nizami. The term Dars-i-Nizami, anyone that hears it thinks anyone that's doing Dars-i-Nizami is automatically kind of like self authenticating themselves. Right, by saying that we teach Dars-i-Nizami, automatically people think that this institute qualifies, which is not the case. It's not about what you teach; it's about how you teach. The pedagogy is as important, or if not more important, as the content, right? So I think a lot of places don't have the pedagogy, and that's what I focus on the YouTube channel. That's what I focus on. So when it's about teaching, it's about how do you want that information to get to them, like Usman was saying as well. And you want them to think about what they're studying. Like you want them to question, you want them to kind of be able to be independent thinkers at the end of the day, right? And that leads me to the next point, which is this group cookie cutouts, right? Where you have so much students that are qualifying from madrasas, but no one's thinking. As in, you're not producing thinkers for the community. What you're producing is like this kind of like, although the term wouldn't be right, sort of like appropriate, minion kind of like mentality, which is just everyone is just saying the same thing. And then if you kind of question the person, well, look, how are you going to solve the problem for this? You rarely will have someone that thinks outside the box. Like in the UK, I'll give you some names of people who are kind of thinking outside the box. Like Sheikh Hassan Ali. Maybe that's because he's got a PhD in education. A PhD or is it Masters? Masters in education. And coming out with Safar Academy and really kind of revamping the whole maktab system, this is another area that we have to tackle as well. And then I think the third problem is issues related to sort of like jobs as well. Like they're not well paid. So the three famous jobs that you can get: imam, maktab teacher, or I don't know, maybe some teaching in some madrasa somewhere.
Arabic in Islamic school.
Yeah, that's it. I mean,
as a non-NQT as well.
And if you've done really well, you might end up at Markfield.
Yeah, that's the kind of like we're not giving them the people that many options, right? Classically, you had positions that the government had allocated for like certain sort of like skills. So alims, muftis, teachers were paid by the government, and there were obviously a lot of scholars who never used to earn from their teaching. They already had their own businesses, family businesses, and that was a really sort of helpful sort of like advantage that a lot of them had. So if someone has on the side their own job, and they can balance the two, teach as well, or write books and things like that, that's better, because then you're not really kind of pressured into coming out with views that conform with whoever's supporting you, right? So if you're kind of being supported by, let's say, the committee masjid, right, you can't say something that goes against them.
Are there people, Mufti Saab, in this country that are actually paid by Islamic educational institutes that are just paid solely to research and study
definitely
more?
Yeah.
Do you think more roles like that need to be created if we're going to
I think
bridge some of these gaps, inshallah?
That needs to be done. The main thing that needs to be done, I think, is you think about yourself, right? If average imam of a mosque will get between 10 to 15,000, maybe 10 to 20 now. It's going to be up. Between 10 to 20,000 average imam will get. Now you have to think to yourself, right? Is that something I want to do? The 5 times salat, sacrifice, teaching the kids, being able to do all these, and a lot of public interaction as well, counselling and all these kind of jobs you're not trained for, right? Which you have to kind of pick up on the side.
It's honestly not worth it.
I couldn't do it. I wouldn't be able to be an imam. It's be too difficult for me.
I think a lot of it comes back down to the last kind of 200, 300 years. I mean, Mufti Saab, you know better the history of the madrasa system, but from what I understand, it's changed quite a bit from the olden days. So people like Imam Ghazali and the earlier kind of scholars, they were quite interdisciplinary, right? As far as I understand, they were into quite a lot of fields. But nowadays, I mean, maybe at a stretch, if you look at the three holiest sites, you look at Aqsa or Makkah and Medina, and you see scholars kind of, students sitting around the scholars, but even they don't have like, proper like faculties for medicine or, counseling or these kind of things. So, I think we've gone too far to the, aiming for the Western kind of model, but we missed the mark altogether. I mean, we look at, we look at actual institutes of the West that are like producing leaders. Like if you look at Eton, which is like the most posh private school in the world, literally, right? They've produced like what 40 something prime ministers. Boris Johnson's from there. Okay, whatever we think of him, but you like it or not, the guy's a prime minister. To be a prime minister, you need some qualifications, right? And at the same time, what were we doing? We're
Awesome, powerful friends.
Harry?
Awesome, powerful friends. Let's level, right?
Yeah. I think maybe Eton example might be a little off because then there's other factors there as well.
What's up? Is it more the consolidation? Like, so if you consolidate, like I think Usman was saying something that kind of like pricked my ear a bit. Was like when you look at more classical and historical, there was no consolidation of the sciences, so there's more sporadic learning of the sciences.
Not necessarily.
Was it consolidated at that time as well?
So they had madrasas there that kind of like specialized in certain areas. So you did. I think the difference was that the governments, they had more opportunities for people who studied. So studying in the olden days wasn't like you had to go through this GCSE business. They didn't have this sort of like way of kind of that everyone, all the population has to do this, this 8 to 9 year thing. They didn't have that. So to kind of specialize as a physician, you had to, be in the company of someone else, your apprenticeship and all that kind of stuff. Whereas these kind of like elite jobs, like thinkers and, those who were consulting the government, they had to go through some sort of, and that's where Dars-e-Nizami came from. Dars-e-Nizami was established for the elite of the Mughals, right? To get into read the high places in the government, you had to do this kind of Dars. In fact, Pakistan, they have 22 years of education, I think it is. Maybe I might be wrong, 21, 22. So it's like, GCSEs and A-levels, they have numbers for it. So I think it's, is it like GCSEs, is it like, how many years is that? I think it's about 10 years, 10, 11 years. Then you got 2 years college, and then you got like university, and then you got something else. And then you got this, so they got the whole system. But I don't know, is that system really going to work for everyone? Maybe different places need different systems.
So what would you, so Mufti Saab, so here's a question for you then. What if you were to redo education, let's say education 2.0, what would it be like if we were to start from scratch? If we didn't have these systems in place, what would you do?
Allahu Akbar. Okay, so I mean, if you were to start from scratch, I would say this. Like Arabic, scrap all of Arabic. Arabic should be taught to kids. Like kids should know Arabic. Maktab should be teaching Arabic. Does that make sense? And the other years, I think, should focus on certain areas. So it's like, it's like, why do we need English in GCSEs? We don't need English. We only need like high level of English. Like a specialist class for studying like, English prose or poetry, etc. And then the rest of it should be focused. So the whole Alim course, I think, if you were to do it in that way, could be reduced down to 3 years, 4 years. 3 year, 4 years, and the average person is coming out with good qualifications.
That's because you redesign the whole system, right, from bottom up.
Redesign and then you have to look at what can they do. Like an imam, you don't need an imam to do an 8-year course. You don't need a speaker, someone got a sheikh that gives talks on mimbars. You don't need him to do all these courses. And I know a lot of people, the really intelligent ones, right? The really intelligent graduates, what they tend to do is they tend to become researchers. They tend to become researchers, get PhDs, right? Because they know if you got a PhD, you're basically around the world, universities will recognize you now, right? So
Yeah.
now you can get places anywhere, and that's the strange thing about Western education. It's like you're a specialist in biology, but you can write a PhD or something, or on physics or something, or chemistry maybe, or you can become a professor in something else. And it's like that's what's happening now. So it's like, and then the other group of clever clugs, what they do is they go into finance, and in finance is very lucrative, right? So you got yourself sorted, you got 40-50K a year, and you're doing the khidmat of the deen, right? And you got people who are very serious about your work, you're a consultant, and then it's like, well, then the other sort of like under the bar, the rest of the graduates, they just become imam, and they're treated like an employee, basically, because they don't really have their own sort of like say in the masjid usually. And then you got like
Can I ask you a question? Like,
yeah.
that something that I've thought about it is, like an imam having a say in a masjid. Bar their Islamic understanding, right, which doesn't necessarily is not necessarily contextually related. Why would they have a say? So if they don't understand the context, they don't
Yeah.
understand political situation, economical situation,
Yeah.
little social
I mean,
situation.
I don't have an issue. I don't have a problem with imam not having a say. What my problem is if the committee don't have sort of the right people
Yeah.
for the community, right? Then it's pointless them, dictating to the imam what he needs to do. And I mean, I've seen this many times, like certain masjid, I won't name names. You get an imam who's very active, who knows exactly how to pull the crowd in. He knows exactly what kind of activities to do and how to. And the committee are not happy with this guy, and then we'll get rid of him, or he'll have to go pressurized. And then it's like, when you ask the committee, why did you do this for? They go, we'd rather have a masjid that's we can control. And so you got this kind of problem now, both sides. You don't want an imam that's going to become like a sort of dictator, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, you don't want. So it's a very difficult balance. Anyway, going back to what we were saying, I think we should finish at 12. I think the point that we need to kind of like talk about more, not here, but as Muslims talk about more in our community, is this whole sort of like system of maktabs, a maktab system. You got kids going to a maktab, 10 hours a week. That is a lot of time, guys. 10 hours a week is a lot of time. How much is that in a year? You can give a child, a whole load of skills, right? Why aren't they coming out knowing Arabic? Like, why aren't they coming out knowing like the basic fiqh? Why aren't they coming out knowing this kind of stuff? These are the kind of things I think that need to be looked at in our communities more than anything else.
Well, Mufti Saad, you were mentioning about the salary of kind of the imams, and I think being part of the youth club, I think I found that it's difficult to plan for stuff, right? Especially when we're working volunteers, but I can imagine the same thing with imams. So why isn't there a fund? I mean, Altaf's, in quite a lot of circles, you got Naveed, who's in the charity sector, knows quite a lot of people. I mean, yourself, you're in the scholarly community. Why isn't there a fund, an Islamic fund across Britain that serves just the scholars? So here's 20K, 25K, 30K on top of whatever the madrasa is already paying. Why doesn't that exist?
So,
yeah, I mean, I don't know really.
Sorry, Mustafa.
Yeah, go on.
So I think like with that, I think there's different layers to that and different aspects. I think one of the things is that there needs to be a national waqf fund, right? There needs to be
Isn't there
some
something
kind of
that's been started up recently?
There's a couple that have been started up. There's a national waqf fund by the team down south in London. I think it's somehow related to Sheikh Haytham, but I'm not 100% sure how it is. And there's the one endowment fund as well, which is I think kind of like a mercy mission project as well. So those are two waqf funds that I know of. I know Islamic Relief has one as well. So that's three. The issue is, Musab, when it comes to there's two things. One is I posted something on my Facebook wall that Sheikh Bilal Ismail is doing in South Africa, where he has an Imam development program, right?
Okay.
And I think something under that kind of guise that's led by a scholar, and I think that this is the most important part, is that you have to have credibility and legitimacy in this space to actually do something. And I think that when it comes to a non-scholarly person entering these kind of arenas, it's very difficult unless you have that legitimacy and that that ability to drive the change. the other thing is that there's not enough support for a scholar standing up and doing this as well, and creating that Waqf fund, because Waqf in modern financial structure requires really wise investment, and in quite really wise investment strategies as well. So it's something around connecting up the back end of that Waqf fund, and then there's something about who leads that Waqf fund as well to have that legitimacy and authenticity and the ability to drive change. I think if you can bring those kind of components together, then I think you can do something that's really exciting. In absence of that, what it's going to happen, what it's going to take is literally, if we were going to try to drive that change now, and you were to say to me, Altaf, here's the money, how do you drive this change now? Unfortunately, the only way I can think of doing this and driving this type of change is going to one of the bigger Darul Ulooms across the UK, trying to get one or two of them together to actually drive this type of movement forward. And I don't know how much success you would have in that, because I don't know how much time and ability that they would have to give to that kind of a project. That would be my long and short answer. I hope that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd add to that is, that kind of mindset that a lot of people have is that, look, shouldn't you be doing everything for the sake of Allah? So it's like, in the mindset, the idea is a scholar should not be living in a adequate home. Whatever accommodation he can live in, he should live in that and be happy with it. And he studied the knowledge for the sake of Allah. And why is he asking for a high wage? He should be living off bare minimum. This shows it's like he's
free sabilillah. That's
yeah, free sabilillah. I mean, I had an example of an imam. He said he went to an interview to a particular mosque. Again, I'm not going to mention the name. He goes, he went there, he sat with them, and he talked to them. All right, he told them like the whole situation about the job and his qualifications. And then they said, at the end of the interview, he said, "Oh, are you going to want money?" So the imam said, "Okay, it's fine." He goes, "As long as you can pay for my car's fuel, and you can pay my MOT, and you can pay my house rent, I'll do it free." As in, the mindset was, well, look, all of us, we should be paid for everything, but you imams, you scholars of madrasas, you should be doing it for free. Like, you studying demands that your actions should be done for the sake of Allah, and they understood sake of Allah meaning free of charge.
Free sabilillah.
Free sabilillah.
I think there's something that there's certain masajid across the country which are kind of doing much better now, right? When it comes to supporting and driving for the imams. And I think it's going to take that type of leadership change in the committees over a longer period of time. The best change agent in the world is Malikul Maut. And I think you have to kind of wait for him to do his thing, and the changes to take place in the masjids over a longer period of time for that thing to change. Because
wow, I just clicked on what you meant there, bro.
Change agent, bro. Death is the biggest change agent in the world.
Whoa, you just killed off a whole entire generation, bro.
I said some people. I said there's some people within the elderly generation who are awesome, bro. But because they won't drive forward that change. Like, the question should be, if you find an inspirational imam, is how much is it going to cost me for you to be here full time? Like, what are your worldly, what do you need for us as a community that we can support you in, and financially, in terms of what can we pay you as a salary that's going to fulfill your needs, right? So that you can focus full time in the masjid, and your mind's not taken anywhere else. And once you get to that kind of an understanding, and then you get the imam also understanding that they need help and assistance in coordinating and understanding what the needs are and how you meet those things together, I think you're in a better place. But it's going to take time with stuff. And I think that's the thing, and we gotta do our little bit to contribute to that. So definitely. If that's like, sitting on a committee and trying to push a couple of inches this way or that way, just trying
basically, are you trying to say we should become like Illuminati and infiltrate all the different layers of society?
I think there's got to be a degree of entryism. Well, I'm going to get refuted after this. Somebody's going to show this clip to somebody else, and that's it then. Okay. I'm not going to pray in any mosque.
All right, so let's have a look at the questions then, and then we'll finish off. Okay, what are your thoughts on the new sex and relations education? Hey, that's a good one. Yeah, the RSC.
Have you got another 2 hours to spare? Because I don't. I'm on an 18-degree timetable, so...
Just give us a nutshell.
Reminds me of that question somebody asked Sheikh Haytham. How do I increase my sustenance? Brother, get a job. Okay, next question.
It's a good answer.
So go on, Usman. In a nutshell, you know, a lot of people do ask me, like, a lot of people come to me and say, how should we teach our children sex education? And I'm thinking, first of all, I'm the last person to ask. I have no children, right? And then number two is, where in the Alim course have I studied how to teach children sex education? It just seems that people think the Alim qualifies to answer everyone's questions, right? And
You
you
want
know,
Islam though, innit?
huh?
We're ringing up Mufti Saab, my remote's not working,
let
and I've
me-
changed the batteries.
Wait a
What
minute.
shall I do?
Sex education Islamically.
Islam
Let me
panel
check.
volume's not working. Mufti Saab, can you help me?
Let me check the book.
Let me check the book as well. Upside down.
See if you could find the words in there, Mufti Saab.
So I think with SRE, I think, to be honest, it's not really my domain of expertise, but I feel there is a lot to be done at home. There's a lot to be done at home with the parents. And I think that it's not so big of a, from my point of view, I don't have kids again, just like yourself. But I don't feel it's that big a step change that as people are making out. There were already quite a lot of dubious concepts that were taught at school, and we didn't bat an eyelid at all. No, when I was growing up, we
When
were
you say
taught-
dubious concepts, like,
Right.
can you be a bit more specific?
I don't know, just about even
Yes.
Islam, and when you study RE in
Oh,
Islam
okay.
and all this kind of stuff, you're taught all sorts of stuff, and even matters of sexual nature. Most kids have been taught that, and you'd be surprised, and in fact, you'll be living in a bubble if you believe that. By the time a kid's 15, 16-year old, he or she hasn't seen some sort of indecency, regardless, especially if you go to Islamic school. I have kids coming from Islamic schools, and they're not really Islamic schools. And I'm sure we all know.
I think, yeah, that's another issue in our community we need to get out of our system, which is giving everything the Islamic sort of label. Right? Anything that's run by a guy with a hat on his head and a beard, right?
Marketing,
Automatically,
baby.
Islamic schools and what happened to, what's that school down the road, the new one? That a lot of people are causing a fuss about. Eden School, yeah. And it was like, oh, you guys are supposed to be Islamic, and like, okay, then explain to us, what is Islamic? What does it mean to be Islamic?
Ethos only.
Yeah, so it's like, I think, sorry to interrupt you on that, Usman, but I think this is another issue, that in our society, we would give preference to an Islamic school over, I mean, I've seen Darul Ulooms where, you don't want to kind of expose things that happen there, but the kind of things that kids will do, right? I mean, I remember in Pakistan, there were a lot of parents from the Tablighi kind of backgrounds who would send their kids to a madrasa on the pure like sort of like hope, right? Or like what's the word for it? Not yaqeen. Like they had this kind of like made up image of a madrasa in their head, that whoever studies in a madrasa, this person is is going to come out as an angel. So basically, there were these students, right, that were sent by their parents. Parents were Tablighi parents to a particular madrasa in Pakistan. It was not our madrasa, another one. Unfortunately, the guys would like spend their money on watching films all night, like in these movie cafes, right? Smoking drugs, like weed. Their eyes would be like really kind of puffed up. And the 16-year-old, 17-year-old, their parents have so much i'timad. The word is i'timad. What's i'timad in English? Reliance, yeah? Reliance, isn't it? They used to have so much reliance on these madrasas that in the end, what happened is, what are you creating? Like, you parents, what are you creating over there? Because the madrasa only has a certain amount of sort of, jurisdiction when it comes to kids. And the parents are like, they don't know. That's just like the tip of the iceberg. The problem is, so when people send, like, I've had bad experience in UK madrasas, racism, and the most racism I've seen, unfortunately, is Gujaratis. Like, the Gujarati kind of against Pakistanis, it was so bad. Like in the madrasa we were in, it was like Paki this, Paki that. I remember, and they say to me, "Okay, you're okay. You're Afghani." They used to say to me, "You're Afghani. You're okay." Because I went there for a week or so. This was when I was really young.
Pakistani Mufti Saab. Bakro.
Yeah, and that's so, and the teachers, the Gujarati teachers, wouldn't say anything. It was like if you went to them to complain, they would just, you know, turn a blind eye on it. And this was a big problem there. So imagine you got these kids have this racism like kind of mentality, and they're graduating. The racism isn't going to go out of them. Where is it going to go? And I'm not saying Pakistanis are free of racism. Clearly, they've got problems. Just recently, they had the Urtugal, remember the Urtugal thing? Urtugal basically has just come into Pakistan here. And basically, what one of them has done is they found the Twitter account of one of the female actresses and has said to her, how comes your pictures are without hijab? And in Urtugal, you're wearing the hijab on your head. What? And they started to give a dawah on the Twitter. So, you know, unfortunately, these kind of things, I think
the thing, you know, about SRE, Musab, like, I think one of the things that we as Muslims fail sometimes to grasp, and I as a parent, like, really struggle with it, is that we live in a hypersexual society, right? Where it's very hypersexual. So any kind of ideal that we have isn't normally fitted within this kind of an environment. So any kind of, you know, notion that we come up with, or the person who's delivering the notion, doesn't really take into account the impact and the influences that are going on in society on a young person. Like the power of something like TikTok and things like that. When you look at TikTok accounts and people on TikTok, and you see young people that are, you know, watching that, you know, there's some of the stuff that you come across in TikTok is just like, what the heck is going on here? Like, as an adult, you're watching it. When you watch some of the cartoons that the kids are watching, you see the innuendos that go into that as well, and you start to realize about how hypersexual society actually is. And then we're talking about RSE and stuff like that within this kind of environment, and then you're saying, okay, we're going to take RSE completely out. So what are you going to teach your kids, and how are you going to teach them? And that's absent.
Yeah, I think I agree.
There's just nothing there. That there's a vacuum there. There's like, oh yeah, we can't do RSE. Okay, we won't do RSE. Fine. Let's park that on one side. So what are we going to teach them in this environment? And nobody's giving you an answer for that. They're like, oh, don't worry, you figure it out. As a parent, you figure it out and somehow manage with your kid. And you're like, as a parent, I don't actually know what I can and can't say.
Let's wait for that Muslim cartoon to come out to explain everything.
So, okay, so do you think the answer is homeschooling then?
I don't think so.
I think I'm still debating this in my head. Hence, right at the start, I asked you guys the question: what do you think about homeschooling? This is one of the reasons. But I think ultimately SRE isn't the reason to go homeschooling. I'm pondering over other issues, but I think SRE in a bubble on its own doesn't mean anything to me. Like, there's so much more, as Altaf was saying. This whole society is based around this hypersexualization. So how can you take this little bubble, which it's probably not even a step change, it's a very gradual change for me from what I experienced at school and to what I'm seeing now being proposed. And I think we as parents or as Muslims or siblings, we need to work at home on what curriculum, what we want to teach them. How can we make sure that is the route that they're taking and not what they're getting from school necessarily? So I think that's what we need to work on towards. But yeah.
So are you saying homeschooling is like an easy get out card?
It's a band-aid on cancer. That's how I would say. That's how I envisage it, Mufti Saab, and that's why I see no value to it.
Is that because of the lack of interaction with other kids, or is it?
I think that the problems you're trying to solve with homeschooling, so it's all about what problem you're trying to solve. So most people, when they're trying to solve a problem, they're trying to solve the problem of an Islamic problem, and I think that that's the wrong answer for the wrong problem. I think if you're trying to look at the creativity of your child and how your child's going to fulfill their ability, then I think that's a better answer. If you're saying to me, I do homeschooling based on that reason, then I can understand that and I appreciate that. But where people say, no, homeschooling is an answer to keeping my child Islamic, I'm like, there's that YouTube video a couple of years back where they did My Sheikh Lives in a Vacuum. Yeah, it's almost like my child lived in that same vacuum.
Borderline
halal, so like it's almost identical to that kind of imagery I have in my head. And that's why I look at it, I think, well, okay, your kid's going to live in isolation for all this time, but at some point, you're going to let them go. And when they go into the big bad world, right, it's going to be a massive shock. And I've seen people, Musab, like that. you've all been at university where you see that one guy, you know, mashallah, who's just landed up in the wrong place. And you're like, bro, man, may Allah help you through this experience. And he goes either way with them. So I don't know. So I think if you're trying to answer the Islamic question, homeschooling for me doesn't make sense. If you're trying to answer about seeking the potential of your child, then I think that, you know,
especially in our communities with, I mean, you know, anyway, I think we'll leave that one. Okay, so let's just see if there's any other interesting questions. Is there anything on Facebook?
No, nothing at the moment, Musab. Nothing I can see.
No abuse about my hat.
You got abuse about your hat. That's standard. Okay. I'm just
That's the only one that's not got blue on today for some reason.
Oh no, man. I need to color coordinate with you guys next time.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Thank you for the free marketing, brothers.
Anything else to final sort of remarks you want to make? Any comments?
I think it's something that is a really good topic. I think, like you say, Musabi, it does need revisiting.
What would you like to tell our audience, Usman? Come on, tell them something.
What would I like to tell the audience? Okay, right. I'll tell the audience. Not my quote. I'm stealing from someone else. So Altaf, you may know him, and Mufti Saab, you may know him as well. Sufyan Ismail, one of the founders of Men. So I was at a training thing with him a long while ago, for one of his caseworker things, and he mentioned something really that struck home with me. He said, you know, from time to time we get like these brilliant individuals, right? We get these brilliant individuals who, you know, they're worthwhile. They excel in like whatever field they go in. You know, they become a doctor, they become a top class kind of alim or whatever, right? They become a big YouTuber like Mufti Saab, mashallah, and you know, any of those kind of things, right? But then what we really need is, he goes, the real change will come when one of these champions kind of stays back and tries to take the rest of the community with him or her. And I think that's really what we need to think about. Like, you know, we're all in our own, like, you know, fields and thinking, okay, you know, how am I going to improve my life and so on. But sometimes you got to take a step back and say, how can I bring the rest of my, for example, like the situation I'm thinking for myself is, I'm in one of your classes, Mufti Saab, and I think, how can I bring some of these younger guys alongside with me in terms of the education so they can think about it properly? Okay, it's not a big cohort, it's a small cohort of students, right? But how can we bring that forward? And I think if everyone takes that approach, and I can do a lot more on working on that myself, but I think if everyone takes that approach of bringing everyone else up in terms of their education, in terms of whatever little help they can give them, I think that will make our community a lot better, ultimately.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair. Usman, do you have, if anyone wants to contact you regarding tuition or anything, do you have any sort of details, anything?
I don't know about that, but yeah, you can just drop me a message on Facebook, find me, Usman Rana.
What I'll do is later on I'll put in the description, anyone wants to contact him, if you can send me your details, anything, if anyone wants advice on tuition, or maybe they want to send your kids to you. Yeah, who knows? Inshallah.
Okay, Jazakallah for that. I wasn't expecting that, but my local mosque wanted a shout out, so if you don't mind, I'll give them a shout out. GBMF for looking for a bit of charity donation, so yeah.
Yeah, so the charity representative, mashallah.
What was that, brother? What were you saying?
Which charity was on here, Mufti Saab? I don't even know what the name is.
The Great British Muslim Foundation.
Oh, we know the Imam there, Abdul Hay Sallu.
Jazakallah khair, guys. Thank you guys for watching. We did go over time. We said it was going to be for 1 hour, but you know what happens in our. So inshallah, Monday, inshallah, we're going to have Zakaria with us, hopefully. And topic's going to be around about Arabic. It's going to be more about learning Arabic and sort of like challenges and problems. And it's going to be more focused on Arabic learning. So that's why today we didn't really kind of focus on the Arabic side of learning as well.
Mufti Saab, guess what my screen's going to do on that day? This is what my screen's going to do on that day.
I've been told to tell you, Altaf, to go on YouTube and type in what? Man United 8, Arsenal 2. And watch the highlights, apparently. I don't understand any football references, guys, so...
just tell Hamoudi just to watch highlights from any of the last 3-4 seasons. It'll be... and if he's looking for anything good to watch, it's on UK Gold.
He said Arsenal have done nothing.
No, mashallah. MashaAllah.
All right,
I just
guys.
want to thank you.
Hit the like button if you guys enjoyed this podcast, and also if you have any sort of like future sort of requests and podcast titles or topics that you want us to discuss, or maybe you have some guests that maybe we can bring on as well. Inshallah, let us know, and hopefully, inshallah, next week is going to be the last week of Ramadan. So let us know if you guys think we should continue this after Ramadan. I personally think I benefit a lot, and lots of people that I've met. I mean, the other day someone phoned my dad and told him to call me to ask a question about the podcast. Yeah, so some of you guys are contacting my dad and asking him to get to me.
No one ever contact my dad, please. Ever.
I don't
Jazakallah.
know I'm doing this.
Jazakallah khair, guys. So yeah, so let us know inshallah in the comments, and we will see you guys, and make dua for us as well. Yeah, so everyone make dua for us. Last days, these are the 10 days. Allah could change our lives in these last 10 days, and these are the times to get close to Allah. Read as much Quran as you can. That's why we wanted to make it short, basically, so that you guys can have a chance to be able to read Quran and tahajjud and other things as well. Jazakallah khair, guys. Thank you very much, and take care inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.